Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at this brand new HBX buggy I just got in the mail a few days ago. I'm excited about this because I'm a big fan of HBX. I have several of their RC cars and they're really well built for the price. They're just a lot of fun and they're not real expensive. And I was excited to get my hands on this one because this one looks really neat. This is like more of like a sand buggy or dune buggy type shaped 1/14 scale buggy. The name of this buggy is the Spectre, as you may be able to see in the decals there. Let me move the car out of the way and we'll show you the box real briefly. It shows you here that it's the Spectre. Let me make sure everything's focused in. And the model number is the 16886. The truck I have is the little 16889. It's over on my shelf back here. That I have really loved that little truck. So that's why, again, I was really excited to get my hands on this new 1/14 scale buggy from HBX. They list some of the features here: ready to run, 4-wheel drive, 2.4 gigahertz, but it has aluminum capped oil filled shocks. It doesn't say oil filled there, but it does say it in other locations. So it's got aluminum caps on the top. The shock itself may be plastic, but they are oil filled. That's going to make a huge difference on how it absorbs jumps and impacts and how it handles. It's got full ball bearings. That's amazing at this price. You know, it's nice that most cars nowadays do have them, but it's a big plus on runtime and top speed. This is the brushed version. I'll show you guys that on the back. It's got a metal differential, and it says here splash waterproof. So it's gonna handle being splashed with water, but you're not gonna be able to submerge it in the water. And here is the pictures of all these parts. Your metal drive shaft and cups in the differential, and then here are the 4 oil filled, and it says aluminum capped oil filled shocks. The 16889 that I have did not come with oil filled shocks. They were just friction shocks, and that was one of the first upgrades I did on that one. I'm excited that this one just come with oil filled shocks. A heavy duty rear sway bar for stability, that's nice. Here is the heavy duty sealed differential unit here. Your advanced slipper clutch. Now that's cool. This car has a slipper clutch. You have to access that by taking the top off the car to get in there. That will allow you to adjust the tension, how quickly the car peels out, or if the tires are a bit loose when you accelerate. Too loose, the car will not accelerate well at all. It'll also help the car on when you do a large jump or an impact to keep from, if it's adjusted properly, then if it's not too tight, it can help protect those gears from stripping on a hard impact as well. But it's mostly for adjusting to the conditions on the type of track that you are racing on. You got your metal heavy duty machined metal drive shafts, like your dog bones here for the front, and then these I believe are the ones for the rear. Your full ball bearings, all metal gears again, and this is a picture of the brushless version. Unfortunately, I just had the brushed. That's okay. I prefer to have the brushless version. I don't know if that was even available at the time that Banggood was kind enough to send this out to me, but I certainly would like to have the brushless version of this at some point if I could. So, and there are 2 versions of this car. Let me show you guys where it's check marked here. Oh, it was on that same side. You got the brushed version, which is check marked here, and there's also a brushless version. And then there's 2 versions of this particular car. I had the Spectre F46, this dune buggy, and then there's more of a truck style buggy type. I'm not exactly sure what you would call that design, and that's the T14 Tempest. So they have 2 versions, same vehicle, just slightly different body design. And this does have white LEDs as well. So let's take a closer look at the vehicle. Again, just really feels really nicely built. Here are those oil filled shocks. They're going to be a little hard to see in the video, but let me try to make sure we get this focused. You've got the 2 in the front are laying horizontal, and the only way to see that would be to take this body off and really show you, but it's down in here. You have to take these screws out, and then I think the body will lift up. And then here they are on the side. You can see the drive shafts here are enclosed, so you can't see them, but you do have metal dog bones here in the front of the buggy. There are white LEDs here on the bar across the top, and then there's 2 headlights that are also white. The battery compartment is back here in the back, and it's a little bit of a pain to get open. You have to press these tabs down and then pull up, and it's a lithium ion 2-cell in here. The plugs are back here, and I ran them down. You're gonna have to you have to plug this in below the battery compartment. I don't see any way of getting those plugged in inside the battery compartment and being able to get the battery compartment closed up and secure. So here is one of the plugs. So you need to make sure that you get these out of the way and don't get them, you know, don't damage them while driving or get them wound up in something. So, because here's your drive shaft from the front to the back for your 4-wheel drive. The tires feel really nice. They're nice rubber compound. I can't tell if they're, I'm not real good at that, telling whether or not there's foam inside of here, but it kind of feels like there might be. It doesn't sink in my fingers as quickly and make this sound like you expect if it's completely empty. So there might be, I might be able to see if I can pull this back, but it feels like they may almost be glued to the rim. But that shouldn't be a big deal. It's going to help a little bit, but I wouldn't expect these to balloon up or slip or anything on these particular wheels on just a brushed 2S system like this. You do have a spare tire. I'm sure this is a functional one, and it comes with this nice tire cover over it. It makes it look very authentic. But I would imagine if you pull this off, and I'm just guessing, the tire should be functional, but I don't know if it comes on top of a, you know, a spare wheel like this, or if it's just a generic wheel for the tire. But this is, it feels really nice. I would probably recommend opening these oil-filled shocks up and make sure that they have the sufficient oil. You don't necessarily have to have them all the way full, but they do feel a little bit bouncy. Much better than spring friction shocks that only use a spring, but they might need a little more oil. I'm only telling you that because that's common with these Chinese import, more of lesser known brands. I hate to call it off-brand because HBX is a big RC company in the world, but they're not as well known as your big Traxxas, Low-C, you know, Red Cat brands. They're obviously a lot more expensive. Those will come with the right amount of oil in them. These other brands like HBX, Zinlahong, GP Toys, all those brands, they tend sometimes when they use oil to not always get the proper amount of oil inside of there. So again, there's a slipper clutch down in here, and I'm not going to mess with showing that right now because I'm going to have to open this up and pull it open. But the instruction manual mentions wedging your screwdriver in there and then turning a wheel, and it will allow you to tighten up like a nut on there that will adjust whether the car takes off, you know, with a decent acceleration, or if it's too tight, the tires will want to spin. You know, if you got too much acceleration setting. If it is set too loose, then the car is going to tend to want to slip a little acceleration and like almost as if the tires were slipping because the slipper clutch would be too loose. But you can fine tune that for whatever kind of track you're racing on. Whether you need a dirt track is going to need different slipper clutch settings than a pavement track because of the traction differences. And again, when you're jumping, if you're on a course with a lot of jumps, the slipper clutch will help you land and get a good acceleration off the jump, while also saving the gears from, you know, being bound that would slip some. And a hard impact, those gears could take quite a jolt, and you could potentially strip a gear. And a slipper clutch will help to protect that, especially as long as the slipper clutch is not tightened, clamped all the way down. You clamp it all the way down, and it's just going to be as if it's not there. You can actually do more harm than good to tightening the slipper clutch all the way. But again, it has a pretty decent plastic compound here, and there are some metal parts here in the turnbuckles. Again, aluminum cap shocks. It's gonna be hard to see underneath the hood, so to speak, but it overall feels to be really nicely built. If I can get this plugged in, which I don't know how easily I'm going to do, it doesn't need to be plugged in the exact correct way since I'm not going to be driving it. I wanted to show you guys the lights. I'm going to plug it in like this if I can get it. This would obviously not the way you want to drive it with it around the main drive shaft, but I'm doing that just temporarily here for the video. You're going to want to plug it in back up here where my finger is, somewhere there, and use your hands to come in on both sides. It's going to take a little more work to do that, but again, I couldn't see a way of fitting that all within the compartment here for the battery. But then you have an on and off switch here in the back, which it tells you to hold down for 3 seconds and it'll power it up. And there you've got the white lights. Now of course they're flashing, telling me that it needs to be bound with the controller. But you got your 4 lights across the top here, and then your 2 headlights. So that's pretty cool. I always like that they include LEDs on these vehicles. And you've got a charger for the battery. It's just going to be one charging off of your balance plug. Pretty basic USB charger. It's going to take a while to charge this little battery. I'd have to pop this open to tell you the capacity on it. It's not real big. If I can do it now, I will. But again, oh, I was able to get it. Oh, that was much easier since I got it open the first time. Well, let me show you the battery compartment. I wanted to have it shut so everything looked right, but I also didn't know how easy I'd be able to get it open. But here is the battery. It is, let's say here, it is a 1100 milliamp. I was going to guess 1200, but 1100 milliamp 2-cell lithium ion pack. As you can see, there's not a lot of room in here, so you might be able to figure out how to get it inside this compartment and get it closed, but you're probably going to have to plug it in below the compartment. So just be mindful of how you do that so that you don't put the wires in a situation where not only would it actually get tangled here, but you could get tangled on something driving it on a limb or something on the ground and actually damage the cord or snag the car on it. So just be careful on how you do that. And then they give you some decals if you want to add to it your Spectre and your F46. So you could add these. I don't know if I'm going to. I probably will put a few on. I kind of look how it looks already, but these will add some accents to it. So you're more than welcome when you get this to put as many of these decals on as you want. And here is the controller. This is a little different than like my, well actually this may be the same controller that the 16889 came with. I've been using an older HBX controller to my ground, I think it was my ground crusher, because that one didn't have good range. And I think this is that same controller, so we'll have to see. I just never had good luck with range on this. Or I had another version that was made by Pinecone Model or something that was a rebranded HBX, and it was the same car with a different body, and both of those I had bad range. So we'll have to see. Hopefully this one doesn't have those range issues. But anyway, it's just a plastic wheel here on the side, so it's not a foam or rubber gripped one, which I do prefer because that way your hands are not as likely to slip from perspiration. On and off switch, you have a bind button if you need to get it bound. You have your steering and throttle servo reversing in case that would be wrong, but out of the factory that should be correct. You shouldn't need to switch that. It would basically be if you're steering, when you push up on the wheel, it should turn right. If it was turning left, that'd be reversed, and you need to switch the steering reverser. Here's your steering trim. So if it's pulling left or right, you want to fine tune that. This is your steering dual rates, and that's all the way up. What that does is that allows you to adjust the diameter or how far the front wheels turn, because this is a fully proportional steering and throttle car. So you could fine tune if you think it's oversteering or it's steering too abruptly and spinning out, you may want to reduce that so that it has a less steering diameter. And this is going to be your speed, they call it, which would be your throttle trim. I don't think this is your throttle dual rate. It's usually going to be your trim, but it just says speed. So I'd have to look in the controller, because most of the time you have a trim in case the ESC is a little bit out of whack. Let's see what the controller says here for that one. 9. Well, that's just a French manual. I went into the French. I'll show you guys the instruction manual because it's really good. The English is really good in this manual. So let's take a quick look here. That's 9. Yeah, and that says that is your throttle trim. They just call it speed. So of course, if it's creeping forward, you want to give it a little back trim. If it's creeping backwards on you whenever it's in neutral, then you want to give it a little forward trim until you get it in that neutral spot. That's what the the throttle trim is for. And let's take a quick look at that instruction manual. English is in the very front. They show you here how to take the body off here in a moment. They show it there, but I think they show it again on another page. Really, really good English, because I was looking at the explanation here for like the slipper clutch, and they have a good explanation for that. Does mention the throttle trim and a steering trim. It's not common to see instruction manuals written this well from a product that's basically comes from China, that's not really a American-based company. And this is not one that's sold on Amazon. It will be, I'm positive, but this came from Banggood, so it has very good English instructions for a Chinese vendor sold product. Here is the notes on the slipper clutch, and again, this is very well worded. So I want to make sure that focuses in. If you guys want to read that for some reason, just pause the video and hopefully you can read it. But if not, I apologize, it's still rather fine print. They tell you a little bit about, depending on whether you have the Tempest or the Spectre versions of this car, how to take the battery pack out here, which I showed you guys. The Tempest is a little different the way its battery compartment's laid out. It has that tire up on top. And then a little, information about maintenance and charging the battery. So yeah, this is really neat. I'm excited about this one. I'm looking forward to get this one out. I've not driven it yet. We'll have to see how it does, but I'm certain this is going to be fun. We'll have to see how fast it goes, and I think it's gonna. I'm certain this is gonna be good. I think it's gonna handle real well in this design. It seems to be really well balanced. Whenever I hold it in my hands here, it's not top heavy. See how balanced that is? So that means it should be balanced in the jump. If it's really top heavy in the front or back heavy, then it's gonna, it's going to not take off, and its jumps balanced. Even though things fall at the same rate from the sky, if it takes off like this, it's it's going to hit the front first. If it takes off, goofy in the back end sagging, it's you want it to be balanced in the air. So, really looking forward to get this outside, see how this brushed version goes. Again, if you're interested in this, this will be off a purchase link to this in the video description down below. So check that out, and I'll try to link it if they have the brushless version. I'll link to that one as well, because sometimes these will be not a big price difference. To me, depending on your budget, if the brushless one's like 20 bucks or more, to me that's worth it. But there's nothing wrong with the brushed version. That's what we had years ago. Brushless motors, they can burn out, brushless don't, but they still, if you maintain and take care of it, a brushed motor will last you probably longer than you're going to want to be driving the car. All right, guys, that wraps up the table review for this little Spectre 16886 buggy. Let's get outside now for the driver view. Alright guys, so let's take the HBX 16886 brushed little 114 scale buggy out for the test drive. You can see I got it powered on. The white LED headlights and lights across the bar, across the top here, are all lit up. So it's good to go. We'll see how these oil-filled shocks that come on this handle, the jumps. I'm going to drive it around the street some so we can get an idea on the speed. And I don't have my GPS speed reader attached. I might do a follow-up video on that, but we'll see how it goes. It's probably not going to be as quick as the brushless version. Sometimes on these smaller vehicles, there isn't a huge difference between brushed and brushless. It's really depending on the KV at that brushless motor. But let's take it around here and drive it around here and just see how this does. I think this is going to be pretty nice. You can see I don't have the decals on it for the Spectre as a name that they have for some of the decals. Spectre is the name brand of this buggy. I don't have none of those decals on, but I'll probably put those on a later date. Just wanted to get this out before I mess with that and to just get an idea how this guy drives. So let me grab the controller. You can see it is fully proportional, so a little bit of steering and a little bit of throttle. And the controller is not super sensitive, so you can press in some before it even goes. You can see there, fully proportional. So let's take it out now and drive it around. I can see I'm gonna need a little bit of steering trim. Looks like it was, see if I go, that's a oops, I was steering dual rates. Turn the wrong knob. Ooh, that's not bad. Accelerates pretty good, and then it sort of maxes out, the way it's geared. It maxes out, not super fast. About what you'd expect on brushed motor. My guess is brushless is going to be quicker than this. Again, if the brushless one's not much more, that's what I would recommend going with. Though I'm not certain the brushless version's available. I think I would have asked for the brushless version. Boy, it really handles well. Look how it's, as I turn it here in the driveway, the rear tire will lift off, but because of that wide wheelbase on this, it's able to keep on the ground. It's not rolling over. A lot of cars will flip as you do those really sharp turns like that, and this buggy is so far able to keep its wheels, keep itself upright, I should say. It's keeping 3 wheels on the ground. I do have the steering dual rate all the way up. What they always recommend on that though is if you want the rate all the way up, make sure that the steering dual rate is not past a point to where you don't see it able to steer anymore. So if you got it all, your steering dual rate up 3/4 of the way, and you turn it more and it doesn't steer anymore, then you're just putting extra leverage on that servo. The servo's reached the point it can't move any farther, but it's trying to, and that's putting a lot of pressure, for lack of a better word, on the servo, and you could damage it. So you always want to check that steering dual rate to make sure that it doesn't go farther than the steering will actually go. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, it seems to handle good. Whoa, nice. And we're upright again. It's got pretty good power. Very well balanced. As you guys can see, look, it's stuck to the pavement. We haven't actually flipped it over on its back to where I couldn't continue going. But yeah, not real quick. I'm gonna guess probably somewhere in the 15 mph range. Now again, this vehicle, as I mentioned in the table review, has a slipper clutch. So you can adjust that and how you want it to go. So if you want it to be a little bit more acceleration to where the tires will almost spin out, you can tighten it up more. But if you're on a surface where it's maybe looser, you want it to spin it to be a little less likely to spin out, you can loosen the slipper clutch up. But just be mindful that that's going to be a little loose, and if you loosen it too much, then you're going to suffer from really slow acceleration. It's not going to want to, it's going to slip. The slippers, in fact, you could even, if you loosen it enough, you'll hear the slipper clutch slip. You'll hear it until it catches. But they mentioned in instructions, they recommend, and the instruction manual is very good, as I mentioned. They recommend you drive it at first at the default factory setting, which I'm doing, and see how it works for you. Then you can adjust it for your conditions. I'm probably just going to leave it as is. It seems good enough for me. So you can see here, the acceleration looks fine. It's not peeling out, but it's also not slipping. So I think the bit of delay we see is just a delay in the radio system. It's just, I don't think that's a slipper clutch, because you usually would hear that if it's trying to go and it doesn't go immediately. You expect you'd hear that in the gear, and you expect to hear it when you're on the ground where there's actual pressure on it. That's where that slipper clutch is going to work. Off the ground, you shouldn't really hear it if it wasn't, in a spot where it would slip, because there's no torque, there's no pressure on the wheels to cause it to want to. Oh, and we finally flipped it over. Really stable though. I mean, that's the first flip. Most cars I would have, of this size, lots of times you'd flip them over by now. And this one, that's the first flip. I'm thinking that the brushless version, since it's probably going to be quicker, I think that the slipper clutch may be more effective on it, because if it's quicker and more acceleration, which brushless always is really good with that. The torquey, good acceleration. the slipper clutch is going to probably come in handy, even handier for you if you have the brushless version. Whoa! Flipped it over again. It's going to happen, but overall, I'm pretty impressed with the balance overall of this. And one of the biggest reasons is it has oil-filled shocks. So oil-filled shocks are absorbing a lot of these jumps, so it's not as bouncy as just your good old friction shocks, which a lot of cars, most cars at this price point and size, from these lesser known brands especially, are going to come with just friction shocks. But good power for a brushed motor. But overall, I really like this. It seems really well built. It looks great. And again, you're getting LEDs, you're getting a oil-filled shocks, which is just always a plus, because even though full ball bearings are not uncommon anymore compared to a long time ago, oil-filled shocks are still not that common on these cheaper budget vehicles. Oh, flipped it again. So the fact you got oil-filled shocks, full ball bearings, and a slipper clutch on a vehicle around this price is really, really nice. So I absolutely would recommend this. Just decide which version's right for you. Is brushed good enough, or do you know, is brushless in your budget? If brushless is not much more, I would always suggest going over brushless, because brushed motors do and will burn out. Though there's a lot of misinformation. People act like brushed motors are going to last, you know, a year or something. As long as you don't have bad luck and you take care of the vehicle, brushed motors will last a long time. But a brushless motor is going to have a very long life. It's difficult to burn out a brushless motor. But a brushed motor, you certainly can, and they will eventually. Lots of times they will just start to slow down. They don't necessarily lock up. They can do that, but decide which version's best for you guys. But either way, I would definitely recommend this. So if you're interested in this, I will have a purchase link to this in the video description. Anything you buy through that will help support my channel, but you're not going to pay any more. In fact, lots of times you'll save, because I may have a coupon for a product that can actually get you a savings that you normally wouldn't get. So always be sure to check that out. It's getting bogged down a bit here. This grass is starting to get pretty tall here. Let's see if we can work our way out without having to go get it. Now, this is some pretty tall weeds over here. And again, this is a 1/10 scale or 1/8 scale, we would have no problems. But at 1/14 scale, this is still a bit much. It kind of gets almost got a bit topped out there on that weeds. But I really like the oil-filled shocks. That's a huge, look how nice that was landing. It just is not going to bottom out. It's going to handle jumps better, and then it recover from a jump better with the slipper clutch and oil-filled shock combination. Whoa! Rolled it again. Obviously, if you do a really sharp turn as you're bouncing around like this, that's when I've been most prone to flipping this vehicle over. But overall, it's really nice and stable. Looks fantastic. And again, it's not super expensive. I don't recall the price on this at the moment, but I know it wasn't super expensive. So yeah, guys, that should wrap up the review of the HBX 16886. Not the best driving here in front of my house, I realize, but it gives you a chance to go off-road in the grass and get you guys some speed runs, at least to give you an idea, which, again, I'm guessing this is probably somewhere in the 15-mile-per-hour range. I would hope the brushless version would be more like 25 to 30, but you never know on these. Sometimes the brushless versions can be even a hair slower, depending on the KV of the motor and, of course, the gearing system that these use, the gearing ratios and such. But it's got good acceleration off the bat. The slipper clutch seems to be adjusted correctly for how I'd want to drive it on these conditions. But it does top out. The gearing, the combination of this brushed motor's top end along with the gearing ratio, it gets up to its top speed almost immediately and then just levels out, which is fine. This is meant to be off-road. This is not necessarily a racing vehicle, but the brushless should have a higher top speed and I would think, and this combination with this vehicle might be a better fit for a lot of people, but we'll have to see. All right, guys, that wraps up the review of the 16886 by HBX. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and when you do that, click the bell so you're notified when I upload new videos. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.
The power of the dark side.